Andiyan na siya, wala pa. Pakisabihan. Tapos Ilan na tayo? 18 na? Diyan na lahat. Ando ba marami ba doon sa likod? Sige. Andiyan na Senator Villar. May kausap lang sila lahat. Si Gordon ba abroad? Ano? Nasa abroad ba si Gordon? Sa abroad? The 63rd session of the Senate in the second regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Cynthia Villar will lead the chamber in prayer.
Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of God. Almighty God, creator of all, make our nation rise. Rise from terror and those who sow it, for you have not given us a spirit of fear, but of power. Rise above disunity, dispute, disagreement, or discord, for you have instructed us to live in harmony with one another. Grant us peace and prosperity. Let your truth prevail in our land. With the gifts and provisions you have given us, may we always work hand in hand. We implore you, guide us to do what you want us to do. Together we thank you. We bring back all glory and praise to you. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Dilimad, Drilon, Ercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligada, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Subiri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 20 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 62nd session, Tuesday, February 27, 2018, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, we'd like to greet and welcome guests in the gallery. The BTC commissioners, Mr. President, the Bangsamoro Transition Commission commissioners are with us. Chairman Ghazali Jafar, Maher Iqbal, Jose Lorena, Hussein Amin, Sultan Firdausi Ismail Abbas, Harun Abbas, Raisa Jahuri, Maisara Dandamun Latif, Hossein Munoz, Said Sheikh, Datu Mussolini S. Lidasan, Melanio Ulama, Romeo Saliga, Ibrahim Ali, Amal Sulaiman, Hatimil Hassan. Also, we have the United Youth for Peace and Development, NCR, the Alliance of Bangsamoro Organizations for Peace and Development. Also, guests from OPAP, Yusek Nabil Tan, Asek Asel Papa, and guests of Senator Pacquiao, Mayor Celso Oliver Datos of Lukban, Quezon. We also have the guests headed by former Senator Bobby Tañada and former Assemblyman Oscar Santos, Eduardo Caed Mora, Rene Cerilla of PKMP, Mr. Tirso Martinez and Adel Arandela of Nyogan, Sok Banzuela of Pakisama, and members of the Kilos Magninyog. And also the PSC officials, Mr. President, are here with us. Chairman William Butch Ramirez, Commissioner Arnold Agustin, Commissioner Ramon Fernandez, Commissioner Charles Raymond Maxi, and the Philippine Sports Institute Director Mark Velasco. Also visitors of Senator Villar, Vice Mayors Leonila Onya, Liv Antiporda, Napoleon Malto, Randy Cambe, Esterlina Aguinaldo, Gina Chan, and the Barangay Captain Cristina Medina and Barangay Councilors of Barangay Santa Monica, Agone, Bulacan, guests of Senator Aquino. I'd like to welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Bills on first reading, 1711, an act amending sections 7 and 17 of Republic Act number 10667, otherwise known as the Philippine Competition Act, and for other purposes, Senator Zubiri.
Referred to the Committees on Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Affairs.
1712, an act establishing the Sarangani Sports Training Center in the municipality of Alabel, province of Sarangani, and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao.
To the Committees on Sports and Finance.
1713, an act providing for a value for money procurement, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9184, otherwise known as the Government Procurement Reform Act, and for other purposes, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Finance.
1714, an act instituting and institutionalizing reforms in the health sector to achieve universal health care for all Filipinos, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Resolutions. Peace Resolution number 664, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises and Labor, Employment, and Human Resource Development to conduct an inquiry on the implementation of Republic Act number 7699 or the Portability Law with the end in view of addressing the seeming non-compliance of the state-run pension funds and reviewing the existing benefits, including pension or employees in the public and private sectors, Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committees on Government Corporations, Public Enterprises, and Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
665, resolution honoring the late Napoleon Abueva, National Artist of the Philippines, for his outstanding and historic legacy exhibited by his masterpieces that showcase Filipino excellence and ingenuity, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communication, letter from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act number 7653, Circular number 997, dated 15 February 2018, and Circular letter number CL-2018-011, dated 9 February 2018.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, in the agenda for today, first in line is the BBL. the Bangsamoro Basic Law proposal, Mr. President. But it seems that there is a delay in the bills and index. So while we are waiting for that, let us move on to the second in the agenda, Mr. President. So with the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special order. Senate Bill 1716 under Committee Report 254.
Any objection?
Which one? This one?
Majority Leader? Majority Leader? Session suspended.
Wala pa. Ito mismo. May number na. Committee report for this sports, wala, hindi pa na-receive sa reference of business, hindi pa. Diba? Dito ba? Sarangani sports ba to? Iba to eh. Iba to o iba? Wala, not today. Sarangani yung refer natin. Hindi nga, hindi pa na-refer. ito muna, isa lang muna. Isa pa. Dalawa na ba ito? Okay. Okay, ano sinasabi pa si Ron? Pending motion lang.
Mr. President, we're ready to resume.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I withdraw my motion before the break.
Motion is withdrawn.
Thank you. In replacement of the motion, I move that we proceed with the additional reference of business, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Secretary, let's do the additional reference of business.
Committee reports. Committee report number 254, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Sports, Ways and Means, and Finance on Senate Bill number 1716, with Senators Sonny Angara, Paolo Benigno Bamaquino IV, and Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao as authors thereof, entitled An Act Creating and Establishing a Sports Complex known as the Philippine Amateur Sports Training Center, and funding for the acquisition of property, construction of facilities, including its administration, maintenance, and management, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 316, 675, and 1517, taking into consideration House Bill number 5615, Senators Emmanuel Manny D. Pacquiao and Sonny Angara.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 255, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Local Government, Finance, Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes, and Ways and Means, as recommended by the Subcommittee on the Bangsamoro Basic Law on Senate Bill number 1717, with Senators Pimentel III, Subiri, Hontiveros, Aquino IV, Angara, Ligada, and Pangilinan as authors thereof, entitled An Act Providing for the Basic Law for the Bangsamoro and Abolishing the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, repealing for the purpose of Republic Act number 9054, entitled An Act to Strengthen and Expand the Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and Republic Act number 6734, entitled An Act Providing for an Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 1608, 1646, 1652, and 1661, Senator Subiri.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Senate Bill 1717, under Committee Report 255.
Any objection? Hearing none. The Minority Leader is recognized.
This is not an objection, Mr. President. Just a manifestation for the record. Our agreement with the Majority Leader is that the agenda for the week should be made known to the Chamber and to the Senators, particularly to the Minority Leader, the week before. This was not included, obviously, because the report was not yet ready. The report was just signed it today. But we are not raising any objection because this is a very important bill and we will support this. However, we hope that this is not a precedent for future action. Thank you, Mr. President.
We beg the indulgence of the Minority Leader, Mr. President, but due to the importance of the measure, we were happy that we were very glad that the committee report has been finalized and we are ready to take it up. So we thank the support and the manifestation. We take note of the manifestation, Mr. President.
So there being no objection, a motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to consider Senate Bill 1717 under Committee Report 255.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act providing for the basic law for the Bangsamoro and abolishing the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 9054, entitled An Act to Strengthen and Expand the Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and Republic Act number 6734, entitled An Act Providing for an Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask the chair of the subcommittee on the PBL, Senator Mig Zubiri, be recognized. Afterwards, Senator Angara, the chair of the Committee on Local Government, will co-sponsor the measure.
Senator Zubiri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President and Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am honored to sponsor a landmark bill with so much promise and so much hope for lasting peace in Mindanao and the rest of our country. This bill, jointly submitted to the Subcommittee on the Bangsamoro Basic Law, Committees on Local Government, Ways and Means, Finance, as well as constitutional amendments, is a product of 11 public hearings, 6 whole days of technical working group meetings, and several thousand man-hours of labor. But before I proceed to the rest of my sponsorship, let me thank the chairman of the Local Government Committee, the Mother Committee, Senator Sani Angara, for graciously acceding to the creation of the subcommittee to hear this bill. Also to the Senate President for granting many of our requests and as principal author of the measure. This bill, whose other co-authors aside from this representation are Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Risa Ontiveros, and many of us here, are collective effort of the entire chamber. Nowadays, it is very rare that we see a measure with such strong bipartisan support. But fortunately and for good reason, we have clear bipartisan support for this bill. And I thank all my colleagues for such support, especially those who attended our hearings, both here in the Senate and out of town. In all the provinces of the current arm, we were joined by no other than Sani Angara, Senator J.V. Ejercito, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Cynthia Villar, and the Senate President. I was told by my staff, Mr. President, that in recent Senate history, we have created a record of sorts in terms of out-of-town committee hearings with the number of senators in attendance. In Zamboanga alone, we had 7 senators, Your Honors. It shows the importance the Chamber has accorded to this bill. And the reception of the people we consulted on the bill was amazing, and mostly have voiced their strong support for the immediate passage of this measure. Allow me also, Mr. President, to take this opportunity to thank the members of the BTC, headed by no less than the chairman of the BTC, the vice chairman of the MILF, Chairman Ghazali Jafar, who is here with us today, and all the members of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. We'd like to also thank the members of the OPAP, headed by Secretary Jess Dureza and Yusek Nabil Tan, and other officials of the said agency. We'd like to also thank the AFP for providing us the security and the mobility. Mr. President, we would have never been able to go and do what we had done in 2 weekends if it weren't for the help of our friends in the Air Force, Navy, and the Armed Forces, and the Army. Headed, of course, by their very own Chief of Staff, General Ray Guerrero, and West Mincom Commander Lieutenant General Carlito Galvez, as well as our PLLO, or Legislative Liaison Officer for the AFP, Brigadier General Jess Estuesta. And many other names that I want to thank, Mr. President. Mujib Hataman, the Governor of ARM, who was our driver in 2 of our visits there, who drove for us, the senators, together with no less than the Chairman Al-Hajj Murad Ibrahim, and the MILF Central Committee members for warmly receiving us in their camp at Camp Darapanan. And to all the members of the academe, as well as the political leaders of these areas, the governors, the mayors. There's so much to mention, Mr. President. I believe it may take a bit of our time. So moving forward, Mr. President, in the course of our hearing, or the hearings, we also made another record for the highest number of senators simultaneously visiting an MILF camp. When we visited no less than the chairman Alhaj Murad Ibrahim together with the members of the MILF at Camp Darapanan. We were very honored that they accepted us warmly, Mr. President. This has cemented the mutual trust and confidence with each other. We also took a side trip to Marawi City, to Ground Zero, which, by the way, Mr. President, is still closed to the public, and even former residents of the houses and buildings were not allowed to enter the site. For us to better assess the damage and personally see the horrors of war, how war could bring so much damage to a once vibrant and thriving community. When we saw the destruction of Marawi City, Mr. President, we could not hold back our emotions. What once was an imposing, sturdy, and colorful cultural city of Marawi is now reduced to rubble. Such a horrific sight, and will be forever tattooed in our minds. I must say with conviction, enough of these wars, Mr. President. Our Moro brethren and the Filipino people had suffered long enough, and peace should now be our utmost priority. The advent of Islam in southern Philippines started during the end of the 13th century and the beginning of the 14th century when Arab traders arrived in Sulu and performed missionary activities. This was the phase of the coming of Sheikh al-Maktoum, and it planted the first seeds of Islam that were sowed by them. The arrival of the Sumatran Islamic influences and political institutions followed in the end of the 14th century. This phase is represented in the Sulu Tarsilas by the coming of Raja Bangida Ali, who arrived in Sulu with ministers and soldiers that established a principality. This was followed by the establishment of the Sultanate of Sulu in the middle of the 15th century under Sharif Abu Bakr, an Arab who traveled extensively in Malaysia. And the establishment of the Sultanate assumes that a large number of coastal inhabitants had become Muslims and responsive to such Islamic institutions. Islam then spread to the Cotabato Basin and subsequently spread to Lanao area by the end of the 15th century. This signified in the Mindanao Tarsilas by the coming of Sharif Muhammad Kabugsuan. Islamic influences in Sulu and Mindanao increased through greater maritime contacts with Malacca, Java, and Borneo, and occasional visits of Muslim traders and missionaries from Arab and Indian lands. By the second half of the 16th century, Manila was already ruled by the members of the Bornean aristocracy and signified that Islamization of the area around Manila Bay. We know the name Raja Sulaiman, and when the Spaniards came to Manila in the last quarter of the 16th century, started the fall of Manila as a Muslim principality. Despite attempts by the Spaniards to colonize Sulu, Maguindanao, and Lanao areas during their more than 300 years of presence in the Philippines, the Spaniards were not successful to convert the Muslims in the area to Christianity and maintain their Islamic way of life and political institutions. Then came the Americans and the short-lived Japanese government in the country, who were not successful as well in colonizing Muslim Mindanao. Bangsamoro, Mr. President, loosely translated to English, means Moro nation or Moro land. The term came into being when the Spanish colonizers arrived in Manila in mid-1500s and saw a strong Muslim settlement in the area. They had expelled the Moors from Spain after nearly under 800 years of conflict. The Spaniards nicknamed the Philippines Muslim inhabitants as Moros, a corruption of the word Moors. The Bangsamoro people, Mr. President, take pride for not having been colonized by these foreign powers. And I say we too, Christians, should be proud of that. It is their sense that they were able to preserve their cultural, religious, and historical identity. But despite such triumphs, biases, and prejudices by Filipino Christians despite that, the biases towards the Bangsamoro people, Mr. President, still exist. It is in this context that the Bangsamoro people aspire to correct such historical injustice through self-determination. This aspiration for self-determination can be regarded to have started or resurfaced during the 1970s when the Moro National Liberation Front, a splinter group of the Muslim independent movement formed by Nur Miswari, sought an independent Islamic state or autonomous region for the Filipino Muslim minority. From then on, the MNLF had metamorphosed into several organizations and groups, including the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, founded by Hashim Salamat, principally seeking an independent Islamic state in Muslim Mindanao. And the rest, they say, Mr. President, is history. The Muslim secessionist movement is now regarded as the second oldest internal conflict in the world. What are the costs, Mr. President, of this internal conflict? Since the fighting between Philippine government and the Moro rebels started in 1970s, the World Bank study has roughly estimated the direct economic cost of the conflict from 1970 to 2001. This is 2001, Mr. President, to be at $2 to $3 billion. Aside from the direct economic cost are the heavy human and social toll of the conflict. The same study estimated that the death toll since 1970 is at 120,000 people, all Filipinos, Mr. President, and unaccounted numbers of wounded and disabled. Internally displaced people at 2 million, of whom 1 million in 2000 alone during the all-out war, and not to mention the displaced families now in Marawi City. Mr. President, we've attempted twice as legislators through the enactment of Republic Act 6734, or the act providing for an organic act for the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, and subsequently the amendatory law, Republic Act 9054, or an act to strengthen and expand the organic act of the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. Unfortunately, according to at least 2 administrations, and a former president saying it was a failed experiment. I believe, Mr. President, if we consider these 2 laws a failure, they failed because really there was really no full autonomy given to our brother Muslims in Mindanao, especially on the fiscal aspect. If our Muslim brothers and sisters have had an annual pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina for their Hajj to purify their souls, so too are the armed leaders for their annual pilgrimage to Malacanang and Congress to beg for funds from so-called Imperial Manila. Funds that would otherwise accrue to them automatically, that they can allocate based on the needs and development plans of their people. That the other important aspects heavily contributed to the failure of previous autonomous governments in Muslim Mindanao. Which brings me to the proposed measure on the floor, my colleagues, Mr. President. This new Bangsamoro Basic Law gives greatest latitude, if not full autonomy, to the Bangsamoro government, which will be established to assert their political and economic self-determination and pursue development programs for their people according to their peculiar historical, cultural, religious, and national identities. Here are some of their salient features of the proposed law, Mr. President. On territory, the bill proposes to cover what remains of the traditional homeland of the Bangsamoro, who over time has lost much of their territory due to colonization and some policies that have deprived them of their lands and marginalized them. This is part of the historical injustice that the bill proposes to address. The core territory includes the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao and 6 municipalities of Llano del Sur, the cities of Cotabato and Isabela, 39 barangays of North Cotabato, and the contiguous areas that may petition to join the Bangsamoro. Note that the 6 municipalities of Llano del Norte and the 39 barangays of North Cotabato already voted yes in the 2001 plebiscite for inclusion in the ARM. However, due to a technical issue in the manner by which the plebiscite question was designed and the manner of appreciation of the majority votes, they were not included to be part of ARM, and thus excluded from its geographical entity. The bill proposes to address this challenge by constituting them into a geographic area allowed by the 1987 Constitution on autonomy that allows municipalities and geographic areas to join the autonomous region. This too will give life not only to the peace agreement that we signed with the MILF, but also with the MNLF. With powers of government, Mr. President, we will discuss in the committee report the reserved powers of both national government and the Bangsamoro government, concurrent powers and exclusive powers of both the national government and the Bangsamoro government. Reserved powers are matters over which authority and jurisdiction are retained by the central government. The list of reserved powers that you would pertain to powers that are attributed or attribute to a sovereign country and are important in maintaining its independence and ability to relate to other countries such as foreign policy, defense, citizenship, and others. On the other hand, exclusive powers are granted the Bangsamoro that are powers essential to deliver basic services to its people and enable them to develop as communities such as agriculture, public administration, waste management, etc. Then other features, Mr. President, is the intergovernmental relation mechanism. These bodies to ensure coordination and cooperation between central government and the Bangsamoro government on matters such as environment, energy, fiscal autonomy, etc. These bodies are created as mechanisms to allow degree of synchronization while allowing a reasonable latitude of discretion for the subnational entity to exercise its power in the spirit of autonomy granted to them. Number 4 feature is the Bangsamoro government, Mr. President. I'm quite excited by this particular feature in the BBL. We will create a parliament, Mr. President, after hearings with the constitutionalists and members of the Supreme Court who said that it is not unconstitutional to do so for this geographic area allowed by the Constitution. The Parliament, Mr. President, will be composed of 50% party representatives, 40% directly elected members of Parliament, and 10% sectoral representatives for an inclusive governance system for the Bangsamoro people. The Bangsamoro government will allow them self-governance that will put an end to their feeling of alienation which for decades have fueled the rebellion. This will be a government of their own, a parliamentary government where the chief minister as head of government is supported by a cabinet. The parliamentary system of government is closer to their tradition as the parliament mirrors the traditional leadership such as the Ruma Bichara Council of the Sultanate of Sulu and the Atas Bichara of the Sultanate of Maguindanao. As I mentioned earlier, the representation will be by district, by reserved seats, and party representation, so that no one is left behind. And the beauty of this, Mr. President, candidates now will be voted on the basis of party platforms on the 50% seats, Mr. President. And the programs no longer based on personal or popular personalities or trapo politicos. We're envisioning that the best and the brightest from the academe, the professionals, the women's sectors will be part of this party system of elections, and that they will be elected to the parliament, which in any other circumstance, Mr. President, they will have a difficult time, lalo na kung wala po silang guns, goons, and gold. The reserved seats and sectoral representation will ensure that marginalized sectors, such as the IPs and women's sectors, the youth, and other identities will have a voice in the parliament. An innovation in this bill, Mr. President, is a provision that penalizes the unprincipled transfer from one party to another, which is a problem in this country, Mr. President, we're facing right now, as a matter of fact. This bill proposes that if members of the parliament having been elected under the proposed proportional representation system transfers to another during his incumbency, he will forfeit his seat. This is under Section 19, Article 7. We also placed, I would say, a humble contribution on the anti-dynasty provision, which is included under Section 15, Article 7, which provides that no party representative should be related within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity to a district representative or another party representative in the same parliament. That way, Mr. President, there will be no backdoor entry for families to control the parliament of the Bangsamoro. Although this doesn't, we do not put a anti-dynasty provision for the members who run for mayor, governor, because really, Mr. President, we're still awaiting for a national anti-dynasty measure that hopefully one day we'll see as a measure or as a Republican. Another feature, Mr. President, is the Bangsamoro justice system. The Bangsamoro justice system allows them to implement the civil, commercial, and minor criminal aspects of the Sharia law if the parties are Muslims or where parties have voluntarily submitted to the jurisdiction of the Sharia court. Also, regular courts will continue to function and allow for other indigenous peoples and Christians living in the region to continue to practice their customary laws. The justice system allows them to practice their religions and recognizes the uniqueness of their culture and identity. I think Senator Joel Villanueva and Manny Pacquiao would like to hear this. And let me repeat, the justice system will allow the people to practice the religions and recognize the uniqueness of their culture and identity. In other words, religious freedom. In maintaining control and jurisdiction of the maintaining control and jurisdiction, by the way, Mr. President, will still be with the Supreme Court over the Sharia court system. On public order and security, on the Bangsamoro Police will still remain part of the PNP. I'm sure Senator Lacson would like to hear this. Under the chain of command, and the bill operationalizes Section 21, Article 10 of the Constitution that gives local authorities the ability to manage peace and order, although all the members of the Bangsamoro Police, Mr. President, will have to go through training and the recruitment provided for by the Philippine National Police. The AFP, or the Armed Forces of the Philippines, will still be in full control over the area, Mr. President. On fiscal autonomy, on auditing, on fiscal autonomy, Mr. President, the bill will give true meaning to the concept of true fiscal autonomy by providing them sufficient freedom to determine their priorities and how to best spend their money with the least intervention from central government. We are providing them with a block grant, Mr. President. This will be 6% of the net collections of both the BIR and the Bureau of Customs. This will be automatically appropriated and regularly released to the Bangsamoro akin to the system adopted for the era of the LGUs. This measure addresses the gap in the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao autonomy law that treated ARM only as a national government agency and even less autonomy than an ordinary LGU. And to be clear about it, Mr. President, during our hearings with the DBM, I had asked them in comparison to the other regions what they were getting. Our region of Region 10, Mr. President, on developmental funds alone for this year is getting 82 billion pesos, Mr. President. The developmental funds of their neighbors in the ARM, Region 9, is getting 78 billion pesos. And Region 11 was getting 79 billion pesos for developmental funds. ARM, under the leadership of Mujib Hataman, only for this year had achieved the highest ever at 33 billion pesos. So, under the block grant, it would grant them for next year about 72 billion pesos. That is within the realm of all the other regions, Mr. President. It is not something that is unfair to the other regions. The other feature is the Special Development Fund. We all know that the ARM has to play catch-up in terms of development because of all the strife and war-torn areas and conflict. Many of these areas need to jumpstart their projects and programs. And so we are granting a Special Development Fund of 100 billion to be released within 10 equal installments for a period of 10 years based on the development plan crafted by them. This fund will allow them to also catch up with the rest of the country, as I mentioned earlier. On the plebiscite, Mr. President, because we
feel that this should be a democratic process, the plebiscite for the Bangsamoro Basic Law will happen within 150 days of the approval of the act, after which, by 2022, we will have the elections for the first set of officers of the Bangsamoro government. It will be in transition, the transition team will be the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. And in the plebiscites, succeeding plebiscites, Mr. President, we also put a bit of safeguards because our brothers in Mindanao who feel that there might be a creeping provision in creeping, what they say, creeping invasion of their properties. I say to them, Mr. President, that it will not happen because through a democratic process which allows the LGUs to, through resolution, and file the resolution to the COMELEC, they may be able to join the succeeding plebiscites, Mr. President. We will be granting 3 more plebiscites of 15 years at every 5 years. At the same time, Mr. President, for those provinces who are beside the Bangsamoro region that want to join and opt in, they need a signature or a people's initiative of 20%, Mr. President, of the voting registered voters to be able to join in the plebiscite for the succeeding year. So, Mr. President, with the new features of the Senate Bangsamoro Transition Commission and the Bangsamoro Basic Law, we would have improved governance and accountability, increased developmental funding, and strengthened fiscal autonomy, institutionalizing the Bangsamoro justice system, and many others that I previously had mentioned. In the course of the Bangsamoro struggle, Mr. President, for political and economic self-determination, so much blood had been shed, so many lives have been lost, and so much hope has gone. The Senate, through this bill, now has a rare chance to give justice to what our very own President, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, always says as the historical justice done to the Bangsamoro. We can correct the mistakes of the past. Let us seize this opportunity. Let us not be bystanders in the passing of history. Let us make this spot in our history a meaningful one for the Bangsamoro. Let us not be cowed from our responsibilities, just like the rich tradition, and let's stand up like the rich tradition of this Senate. Mr. President, I do not want to sound like a warmonger, but if we do not heed this clamor for change in the Bangsamoro, God forbid, restlessness among the armed groups and recruitment among extremist groups could spiral out of control. The possibility of another Marawi siege would not be far from the horizon. The country can no longer afford more bloodshed. Our generation has suffered long enough from the clutches of poverty and the evils of war. Let not our children and our future children and grandchildren suffer more. Let us end this war, Mr. President. Let us end this war. There is so much at stake and so much weight upon our shoulders. Let us trust ourselves on the side of history, and certainly passing the BBL is now on the right side of history. This is a road to a just and dignified peace. To a just and dignified peace. Not only for Mindanao, my friends, but in the whole of the Philippines. No one loses in this final peace agreement. We all win in the signing of this agreement. We will all be winners. In closing, Mr. President, the BBL is an instrument of peace. Let us all be instruments of peace so that we can achieve this long-lasting dream of peace for our country. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Mabuhay po ang Mindanao. Mabuhay po ang Bangsamoro Basic Law.
Senator. The
Majority Leader.
Senator Sani Angara wishes to be recognized to sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Distinguished colleagues, to our officials from the Bangsamoro, the BTC, and the OPAP, Office of the Peace Process, who are also co-architects of this bill, Mr. President. And because of the violent conflict in Mindanao, too many lives have been lost. Too many homes have been destroyed. Too many opportunities missed. Too many dreams unrealized. If the conflict is allowed to continue, who knows how much more damage Mindanao will have to sustain. That is why the urgency and level of effort that were invested into crafting the Bangsamoro Basic Law, or BBL, is not only necessary, it is also life-saving and hopefully life-changing. The measure we are sponsoring went through a rigorous process that involved at least 5 public hearings, at least 6 public consultations, in well-attended public consultations in Marawi, Cotabato, Tawi-Tawi, Basilan, Sulu, and Zamboanga City, and at least 6 technical working group meetings. This would not have been possible without the very able leadership of Senator Mig Zubiri, the chair of the subcommittee on the BBL, who did a splendid job. We thank him, we thank our colleagues who journeyed to the ends of the archipelago. Pinakinggan po natin ang saloobin, hinaing, at pangarap ng mga taong maapektuhan ng batas na ito. Sinigurado po namin na malawak, malaya, at inklusibo ang aming konsultasyon. At every step of the way, the majority and the minority joined hands in the spirit of bipartisanship to ensure that this measure fulfills the ultimate objective of achieving long-lasting peace and prosperity in Mindanao through a long-term political solution that resonates and is consistent with our Constitution. Such work has built upon the countless hours devoted by many on all sides in finalizing the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro, the FAB, and the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, or the CAB, as well as the work of the Local Government Committee under then Senator Marcos. Masasabing tinuloy lamang natin ang trabahong nasimulan nila. We hope that this measure improves upon, first, the Tripoli Agreement of 1976, secondly, Republic Act 6734, or the Organic Act of the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and Republic Act 9054, which amends it. Many skeptics have said that the BBL will just give rise to other breakaway groups and will not lead to peace. Their position is understandable, for one only needs to look at the past for proof of this. But to them I say, let us look to the future with hope and with optimism. I say we should not stop trying to find a solution for peace and prosperity in Muslim Mindanao. A well-known Turkish proverb states, patience and perseverance is the key to paradise. In verse 49 of chapter 11, the Quran states, be patient, indeed the best outcome is for the righteous. In Romans 2, 6, 7, he will render to each one according to his works. To those who by patience in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life. Kaya po tumatayo po ngayon, Ginoong Presidente, bilang chairman ng inyong Local Government Committee para suportahan ang agarang pagsabatas nitong BBL. Dekada-dekada na tayong nakaranas ng dahas at nabingi sa putok ng AK-47 at ng Barrett. Pero sa lahat ng sandatang pinasabog sa bakbakan na ito, isa sa hindi pa nakakasa at nagagamit ng maigi ay ang sandata ng batas. The BBL comprises our greatest legal arsenal for achieving peace, which will ultimately help unleash the other positives of the peace process. Nangako na ang mga armadong grupo tulad ng MILF na ibababa na nila ang kanilang armas bilang bahagi ng decommissioning process. Napapanahon na suklian ang disarmament na ito sa pamamagitan ng pagpapatupad sa pangako na paiigtingin ang kanilang otonomiya, autonomy at ang suporta ng pambansang gobyerno para sa kanila. Sa ganitong paraan, Mr. President, masisigurado na imbis na baril at grenada ang itataas, libro at lapis, araro at binhi, pala at semento ang mga hahawakan nila. As the saying goes, we hope they shall beat their swords into plowshares. Where our armed forces laid siege on Marawi City to stop terrorist rebels in their tracks, we need to enact this law so that no other armed group could recruit and amass critical support. Never again should any of our beautiful communities, especially those in Mindanao, ever be at risk of being leveled or destroyed by human hands. The BBL's political prescriptions ensure that the covered areas will become fertile ground, no longer for violence or for terrorism, but instead for opportunity and active civic engagement. The BBL could very well be our most effective means of keeping religious extremism and secessionist tendencies at bay, and hence of achieving long-lasting peace. Pero ang kapayapaan ay nakakamit hindi sa pagtigil ng putukan lamang. Umuusbong ang totoong kapayapaan kapag ito'y nakapulupot sa kaunlaran. Walang saysay ang katahimikan sa Mindanao kung hindi ito hahantong sa mas magandang buhay para sa lahat. Bagamat sagana sa likas yaman ang Mindanao, karamihan po ng pinakamahirap na probinsya ng bansa ay nandirito. 1/3 ng mga mahihirap na Pilipino ayon sa isang pag-aaral ay taga Mindanao. Digmaan raw ang isa sa pinakamalaking dahilan kung bakit mahirap ang Mindanao ngayon. Kaya anumang hakbang para sa kapayapaan ay isang hakbang patungo sa kasaganaan, papunta sa pag-ahon. Let the sounds of war be replaced by the laughter of active school children, the murmur of loving families, and the buzz of investment and of industry. Nagsisimula na marahil ang pag-ahon na ito. Ayon sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas o BSP, noong 2016, halos 10% or 9.4% to be exact ang paglaki ng ekonomiya ng Region 11 o Davao Region, ang pangatlong pinakamabilis na pag-arangkada sa buong bansa. Halos 7.6% naman daw ang paglaki ng Region 10 o Northern Mindanao, the region of the Senate President and of Senator Zubiri noong 2016. Di hamak na mas mabilis sa national average na 6.9%. This is happening because so many Mindanaoan voices are now speaking on the national stage on Mindanao's behalf. From the President, the Senate President, Senator Zubiri and Pacquiao, the Speaker of the House, several cabinet members, many in government today have Mindanao in their hearts. All the more should a long-lasting solution for peace be enacted during this singular window of opportunity. That solution should ultimately rest on giving the Bangsamoro people the freedom to make their own choices, the political and fiscal autonomy to no longer consult with Imperial Manila or the central government on matters that are essentially Bangsamoro matters. With the BBL, the Filipino people will be giving an unprecedented level of trust to the Bangsamoro. In return, we respectfully ask for good governance on their part. As 1986 Constitutional Commissioner Ahmad Domacao Alonto said in a speech, in order to have real freedom, real justice, and real democracy, each section of our society must be given the chance and freedom to develop the ideals they much prize so much in life. Hence, where the Bangsamoro cry out for autonomy and self-rule, so should they be given the opportunity to develop what that autonomy and self-rule ultimately entails. We only ask that they wield such autonomy and self-rule wisely and ensure that more from Muslim Mindanao actually benefit and lead better lives. Such freedom of choice is in fact enshrined in the Constitution and underlines how seemingly separate identities can coexist under the same state, similar to the Scots and the Welsh in Britain, or the Muslims, the Chinese, and the Malays in Malaysia. This is how the BBL will correct historical injustices and usher in Mindanao's renaissance para magkaroon na ng totoong kapatiran sa pagitan ng bawat Pilipino. This is how the measure will pave the way to what Constitutional Commissioner Benaguen called a future of prosperity based on the equality of all peoples. The BBL should be seen as a restorative measure in its recognition of the long and proud history and heritage of the Bangsamoro people. As often mentioned, Mindanao is one of the few places in the country that has successfully withstood foreign conquerors. The sultanates of Sulu, Maguindanao, and Buwayan or General Santos, and the Pangampongs or principalities of the Lanao region already achieved an advanced level of political organization and bureaucracy, while the rest of the country was still organized into separate barangays. Bago pa man itinayo ng mga Kastila ang Manila at Cebu bilang sentro ng kanilang kapangyarihan sa Asia, nakikipagkalakalan na ang Mindanao sa Java, sa Molucas, sa Kanluran, at sa China sa pamamagitan ng Manila at Mindoro sa Hilaga. Marahil sa paglipas ng mga siglo, nakalimutan ang makulay na kasaysayan na ito. At imbis na paghanga ang binigay ng bansa para sa mga kapatid nating Muslim, pag-aalinlangan at takot na lang ang hinayaang mamayani. Kapag naisabatas ang BBL, winawasto po natin ang dekadang paghihirap na naranasan ng ating mga kapatid sa Bangsamoro. Binabalik po natin ang hustisya sa mga pamayanan nila na matagal nang lugmok sa kawalan ng katarungan. At higit sa lahat, ibinabahagi natin sa kanila ang kakayanan para maabot ang kani-kanilang mga pangarap bilang mga kapwa nating Pilipino. Mr. President, this is not the first time the country has embarked on asking the difficult Bangsamoro question or questions. But after years of asking the right questions, perhaps now is the time for us to finally provide some answers. We've attempted to build on the foundations which our predecessors have already laid in place. So many people have helped in the process. Not only have we spent days ensuring the constitutionality of this measure, we've also tried to make it more representative of the colorful fabric that weaves the different Bangsamoro peoples together. And after all the consultations, public hearings, and technical working groups, we have determined that the answer to the Bangsamoro question should be true autonomy and self-determination. It should be founded on clearly delineated, reserved, concurrent, and exclusive powers between the central and Bangsamoro governments. It should be fiscal empowerment and comprehensive representation. Ultimately, it should be brotherhood. It should be shared nationhood. Siguradong marami pa pong pagsubok at hamon ang kailangan harapin para totoong makamit ang kapayapaan at kasaganaan sa Mindanao. But we do hope, Mr. President, history will look back on us as a generation who took on the challenge of crafting a lasting and valuable legal solution to the long-festering problem in Mindanao, so that ultimately peace and prosperity can flourish. Panahon na para sila mismong mga taga-Bangsamoro ang magsusulat na sa mga susunod na kabanata ng kanilang kasaysayan. Mabuhay po ang Bangsamoro, mabuhay po ang Pilipinas. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, also to co-sponsor the measure, Senator Risa Ontiveros wishes to be recognized.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. Mr. President, the conflict in Mindanao has been a democratic and developmental struggle that has spanned decades, claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, uprooted millions, and resulted in inhumane levels of poverty, lawlessness, and uncertainty. It has changed the historical landscape of the southern part of our country, from the brave kingdom of our anti-colonial resistance to the situs of decades-long insurgencies and countless rebellions, the Jabida massacre, the burning of Jolo, the Zamboanga siege, the Marawi disaster, and countless more. It has written the continuing story of Mindanao as filled with narratives of violence, oppression, and marginalization. This afternoon, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, we change that narrative. With the Bangsamoro Basic Law, a bill I proudly co-sponsor with our subcommittee chair, Senator Miggs, our committee chair, Senator Sani Angara, and all the other authors, we renew our commitment to democracy. The persistent strife and poverty in the region has taken its damaging toll on our democratization project. Providing a measure of political, economic, and socio-cultural autonomy of people belonging to the Bangsamoro, with assurance of political participation and representation of indigenous peoples, does not only make Bangsamoro a compliance to an unflinching mandate from our Constitution, it furthers a democratic society that does not succumb to the tyranny of the majority, but one that protects the vulnerable, the disenfranchised, and the historically disempowered. The Bangsamoro Basic Law establishes the political and economic infrastructure that will facilitate fixed capital formation, increase government funding, and international development aid infusion into the region. A legitimate share in the resources and their management will translate into growth, productivity, security, and ultimately empowerment. It will equip the regional government with the crucial resources that can address socio-economic needs of our Bangsamoro peoples. It is our answer to the question that is the disproportionate utilization and distribution of wealth in this country. The Bangsamoro, Mr. President, is our commitment to equitable development. Furthermore, the establishment of a Bangsamoro autonomous government will be an institutional recognition of the justness and legitimacy of the cause of the Bangsamoro people. It is the fulfillment of our promise to put at front and center of their political future their needs, their aspirations, their dreams. Finally, Mr. President, Bangsamoro is our commitment to peace. A peace that is built on and strengthened by democratic ideals, empowerment, progress, and justice. A peace that has long been awaited by a nation that is trying to heal from our fractured history. Maraming martir at bayani na ang ating nailibing. Marami ang nawalan ng bahay, lupa at ari-arian. Marami ang nawalan ng oportunidad at pag-asa. Sa pagpunta nating mga senador sa Mindanao para sa pagdinig sa BBL, kasabay nito sana ang pagsasara ng yugtong ito ng kasaysayan ng Mindanao. Tumatak sa akin ang mga placard na "No Peace Without Women", na panawagan ng mga kababaihan na nagpalaki na ng mga anak nila sa evacuation center. Pass BBL now ng kabataang sumalubong sa atin, nagpa-selfie, nagpahayag ng suporta. Mga kwento ng mga MILF na first time nakasakay ng C-130 at chopper ng AFP na hindi sa gitna ng enkwentro. Mga kwento ng pag-asa. At this point, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I'd like to thank the men and women of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission for their hard work and unwavering zeal in coming up with this revolutionary piece of legislation. Ngayon sa plenaryo, babaguhin natin ang kasaysayan ng lupang uhaw sa kapayapaan. Naway maipagpatuloy natin ang momentum na ito para sa kapayapaan. Magandang hapon po, Mr. President. Maraming salamat.
Mr. President, to allow the other senators to study the bill, Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1717 under Committee Report 255.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders 1716 under Committee Report number 254.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to consider Senate Bill 1716 under Committee Report 254, taking into consideration the manifestation of the Minority Leader, Mr. President.
The Minority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I do not invoke any rule, but our gentleman's agreement with the Majority Leader that the week before a particular session week, our colleagues will be informed of the matters to be agended in order to allow us to give us a little time, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to study the measures. This particular bill, Mr. President, in fact, was only routed the day yesterday or the day before yesterday, and in fact, the agenda did not contain the assigned number. So, in this particular case, there is no particular need to hurry this. We conceded to the request of the Majority Leader on the matter of the Bangsamoro because that's really critical. But we do not see anything here that would require our disregard or setting aside our agreement with the majority. In that sense, Mr. President, may we move that this matter be taken up next week.
Mr. President, well, we do agree, we concur with the manifestation made by the Minority Leader. As a matter of fact, we have done that. We have committed to the agreement, but more or less on the bills that were going to be discussed on the floor. But we did not expect that a bill for sponsorship that was merely for sponsorship would need that lead time at this point. So perhaps may I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session is suspended.
Mr. President,
Gano'n ba?
may we ask for order in the plenary hall, Mr. President?
Sergeant at Arms, please maintain or restore order before we resume session. Ano lang may yan eh, happy lang lahat. Euphoric lahat. Happy.
Be ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, the minority leader wishes to be recognized.
The minority leader.
Mr. President, after discussing off the floor the matters that we raised earlier, we are withdrawing our objection.
The manifestation is noted.
Thank you. We thank the minority leader, Mr. President. Now, may I call for the previous question? My motion was to transfer from the calendar for
Yes, okay.
ordinary business 1716.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
I move to consider Senate Bill 1716 under Committee Report 254.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
We ask Secretary to read the title of the measure, Mr. President.
Secretary.
An act creating and establishing a sports complex known as the Philippine Amateur Sports Training Center and funding for the acquisition of property, construction of facilities, including its administration, maintenance, and management, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask the Chair of the Committee on Sports, Senator Manny Pacquiao, be recognized. Afterwards, Senator Sani Angara will co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
Senator Pacquiao, as the sponsor, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our class athletes have been giving their best to shine in the global platform. With discipline, determination, and dedication, they achieve their goals regardless of the circumstances. With resilience, they maximize the opportunities, Mr. President. They shine despite the setbacks and limitations. However, our committed athletes have yet to show their fullest potentials. They have yet to unleash their maximum capabilities. They have yet to become the ultimate version of themselves. The Philippine government has so much to give in exchange of their relentless efforts. For one, we can provide a training center where they can develop their skills and their abilities. We envision this training center to be a state-of-the-art and highly scientific sports complex. It will include facilities and amenities composed of different equipment and courts necessary for bringing out the best in our athletes. Research states that a viable environment and standard sports facilities have a positive effect on the development of the performance of athletes and promotion of sports. It is undeniable that the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex, Mr. President, and the Phil Sports Arena are completely out of date. When I did an ocular inspection, Mr. President, of the Philippine Sports Commission compound, I have seen for myself the sad condition of the facility. It is disorganized, Mr. President. It is dilapidated. Mr. President, our athletes deserve better. They deserve our best efforts. Our Constitution states that the state shall promote physical education and encourage sports programs, league competitions, and amateur sports, including training for international competitions, to foster self-discipline, teamwork, and excellence for the development of a healthy and alert citizenry. With this, I filed Senate Bill number 1517, the Philippine Amateur Sports Training Center Act, alongside with Senator Sani Angara's Senate Bill number 316 and Senator Bam Aquino's Senate Bill number 675, taking into consideration House Bill number 5615. As Chairman of Senate Committee on Sports, I have the honor to respectfully designate the responsibility of presenting Senate Bill number 1716 under the Committee Report 254 to the Chairman of the Committee on Sports and the Chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, Senator Sani Angara. We believe that it is high time that our athletes be given the state-of-the-art facilities needed for the nourishment of their talents. Now is the best opportunity for us to give the best support to our athletes, Mr. President. With this, our country's dream of obtaining the dominance in the Southeast Asian Games and badging the gold medals in the Olympics, we would be a great leap closer to possibility, Mr. President. And in the process of doing so, we build our athletes' competence and character. Mr. President, I would like to thank the efforts of Senator Angara and Senator Aquino, as well as the support of our fellow senators in helping our athletes achieve their dreams. Our dreams through the passage of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Sani Angara.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. There have been many initiatives by both the private and public sector aimed at improving our performance in sports. But clearly, a lot more can be done. Wala po tayong duda sa puso at galing ng atletang Pilipino, lalo na kung ang pangalan niya ay Manny Pacquiao. Ngunit, paano po sila magtatagumpay kung ang kanilang kagamitan sa pagsasanay ay kulang o kaya naluluma na? Kaya po, Ginoong Presidente, tayo ay tumatayo ngayon para i-sponsor ang Committee Report 254 tungkol sa Senate Bill 1716 ukol sa pagtatag ng isang Philippine Amateur Sports Training Center para lalong gumaling ang ating mga atletang Pilipino. During the committee's deliberations on this measure, it was pointed out that the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex used to be a state-of-the-art complex, but now serves as a center of obsolescence. This was the main stomping ground of our athletes, the same venue that hosted the early form of the Asian Games 4 times in the pre-war period, and the grandstand where the Philippines won its championship in the 2005 Southeast Asian or SEA Games. Many of our training centers are left neglected or worse, in decay. Ito po ang tinitiis ng ating mga atleta kapag sila'y naghahanda para sa kanilang mga laban. Sadly, these venues are a constant reminder of heartbreak and frustration, not only for our athletes but also for our countrymen. Mismong si Heidelin Diaz ay hindi maitago ang pagkadismaya sa kasalukuyang lagay ng ating mga pasilidad. Through her social media account, the Olympic champion lamented how nothing had changed with her weightlifting gym after more than 20 years, while at the same time showing cycling equipment with the seats torn apart in another of her posts. In the 2013 Southeast Asian Games, Filipino divers John David Pahoyo and John Elmerson Fabregas did not score a single point in the 3-meter springboard diving event, where their infamous dives went viral and received bouts of bashing from social media. It was not widely known that the two divers had to contend with but a single springboard and a dry gym for their training here in the country. And worse, the two only managed to practice their synchronized dive only 4 days before the tournament, having found the proper equipment in the host venue. These are the sad realities, Mr. President, our athletes face, but the fact that they succeeded despite the lack of support speaks volumes about their strength of spirit. Ang sabi nga, partida pa yan, paano pa kaya kung may gamit na pang-training? Imagine if we are more supportive of our athletes. How many more Heidelin Diazes or Philippine Dragon Boat teams or successful boxers would there be, Mr. President? Training centers reflect the state of sports in a given country and particularly the support being given by the state. A 2015 study on sport policies of top Olympic countries reported a significant relationship between success and training centers. These facilities, coupled with top-level coaching as well as access to international competition, are the key drivers of an effective sports system, as these directly affect our athletes. For instance, Australia's National Training Centre was the centerpiece of its sports policy overhaul in the early 1980s, after taking home only 5 medals for the 1976 Montreal Olympics. Fast forward to the year 2000, Sydney hosted the Summer Olympics and the country bagged 58 medals, finishing 4th place overall. Kung iisipin na pag-iwanan na po tayo ng mga karatig bansa dito sa Timog Silangang Asya. Myanmar created a 30,000 capacity sports stadium in Naypyidaw, purposely built for the 2013 Southeast Asian Games, which includes an aquatic center, a space for indoor sports, and separate fields for equestrian and archery. On the other hand, Cambodia is already on its 2nd phase of construction for its national sports complex for the 2023 Southeast Asian Games. The 9-hectare Olympic standard facility is capable to house over 1,500 athletes and 100,000 spectators at one time. An important piece of the puzzle is a functional and well-equipped training hub that equates to higher chances of winning podium positions in tournaments. There is simply no silver bullet, Mr. President, for this malady, and our rankings will not catapult overnight. Therefore, the Senate Committee on Sports, chaired by our colleague Senator Manny Pacquiao, is taking an initiative, supported by the Vice Chair, myself, and Senator Joel Villanueva, are taking initiatives to step forward by sponsoring this measure. This sports training center shall adopt a scientific approach in training our athletes using modern equipment. 2 billion pesos shall be appropriated from the savings of the National Treasury for its construction, while there shall be an annual appropriation for the center's maintenance and operation. In addition to being a specialized training venue, the center shall house our athletes to allow unhampered and immersive training for major tournaments, including facilities for expert coaching and referee development. The center is among the primary facilities that would be part of the 97 billion peso Philippine Sports City in Clark, Pampanga, that will also serve as a venue for major international sports events. Our victories in sports uplift the spirit of the nation, Mr. President. The nation, in turn, has responded, although in very limited fashion. For one, the committee pushed to enact Republic Act 10699, as authored by Senator Soto, Recto Villar, among our other colleagues, to provide decent and unselfish incentives for winning athletes and coaches, as well as laws that mandate the creation of various sports academies in Talisay City, Cebu, Alfonso, Cavite, Surigao del Norte, Misamis Occidental, and Davao del Norte, with the help of their representatives. We are glad that our current committee chair, Senator Pacquiao, being an athlete himself, is attuned to the countless difficulties of our athletes. Experiencing these troubles firsthand, siguradong may hugot po ang kanyang mga panukala para pabutihin ang sports ng Pilipinas. Things are already being done to uplift the state of Philippine sports, and the Philippine Amateur Sports Center would definitely be a milestone in this effort, Mr. President. This is a commitment of support to our athletes on and off season. And with the renewed hope brought by this legislation, a reinvigorated culture of sports should permeate throughout the country. I have been told, and I regret to report, that we have the dubious distinction of being the country that has participated the longest in the Olympic Games without winning a single gold medal. The time is up for dreaming and depending on chances and luck, Mr. President. This legislation can and should move us forward in sports. The Philippine Amateur Sports Center will hopefully create new Olympians, produce new Hall of Famers, and most importantly, empower the Filipino athlete to win. Mabuhay po ang atletang Pilipino. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time for the other senators to study the bill, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1716 under Committee Report number 254.
Any objection? Approved.
Mr. President, before we proceed, may we move that the following guests of Senator Pacquiao be acknowledged and recognized. This is the Board of Directors and Officers of the Food Terminal Incorporated, Mr. Ariel Buenaventura, General Raimundo Ferrer, Colonel Mariano Versosa, Attorney Teresa Teves Castaños, Mr. Richard De Jesus, Mr. Mark Spencer C., Ms. Lara Bobis, Mr. Julian Musico, and Attorney Ryan Martinez.
Welcome to our additional guests.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1233 under Committee Report number 8.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, this is the measure on the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are still in the period of individual amendments, considering that this is a substitute bill. I therefore move to continue with the period of individual amendments.
So, yes, we are now in the period for individual amendments. And
Mr. President, we move to recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Francis Pangilinan, and to introduce individual amendments, Senator Recto.
Senators Pangilinan and Recto are recognized.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Pangilinan.
Yes, just a manifestation before we proceed. Mr. President, we suspended the period of individual amendments last Monday because of a debate or discussion on Section 3, letter H. The goods Senator Recto wanted the letter H, Section 3 deleted, and we had asked for a clarification. In the discussions, Mr. President, we had agreed to suspend the period of amendments because we could not agree, Mr. President, on whether or not we would accept, this representation would accept the proposed amendment to delete Section H, number 3, which is actually, Mr. President, the committee, the Trust Fund Committee, composed of 11 members. The debate, we debated this and we could not agree, and we asked for more time, Mr. President, so that we could consult some of the stakeholders, organizations. For the record, Mr. President, former Senator Bobby Tañada is here with us in the gallery. Earlier, Congressman Oka Santos was also here. Both have been championing the cause of the coconut farmers and the cocoa levy retrieval since the time of the Marcos regime. More than 40 years, Mr. President. And I felt that before we could act on a very sensitive issue of whether or not we should delete the committee, and in place of a committee, it would be the Department of Finance as well as the Bureau of Treasury. I know the Senate President will confirm this. Even the Senate President manifested that this is fundamentally changing the measure. And as such, I felt I could not agree without having to go back to a number of stakeholders who have been with us, who have been struggling even during the time of the Marcos regime. And Mr. President, after consulting with them, earlier, Senator Bobby Tañada, and I asked his permission, he said that the farmers' representation in this committee, in the Trust Fund Committee, is actually, you can liken it to the soul of the measure. The tragedy of the Cocoa Levy Fund, Mr. President, was that it came from the farmers, and yet today the farmers, because of their non-involvement, actually, in the decision-making, has led to billions being collected, and yet the coconut farmers have remained impoverished, the poorest, actually, of our farmers. And therefore, we are now back debating this subject matter. If I may just also manifest, if we, as proposed, delete the committee and in place have the DOF and the Bureau of Treasury decide on the investments, the investments in itself, or deciding on the investments, is just one of the powers of the committee, Mr. President. The decision to privatize, for example, the oil mills, or go into joint ventures on the oil mills, is also a power that is lodged with the committee. Apart from this, approving disbursements, Mr. President, is also lodged with this committee. The sale of and disposition of other assets is also lodged in this committee. And therefore, we see the need for farmers' representation in the committee, and not just leave these powers and this decision-making to the government, and specifically to the Bureau of Treasury and the Department of Finance. With this, Mr. President, we regret to say that we cannot accept the proposed amendments to delete the committee and Section 3, number H, as proposed, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may, before I enjoin the issues and compare basically the proposals at hand, allow me to make my own manifestation, Mr. President. Mr. President, do I have the floor?
Yes. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. When it comes to diagnosing the ills of the coconut industry, I share the same findings with my esteemed colleagues. 9 out of 10 live below the poverty line. The irony of their penury is best captured by this observation. Kung sino pa ang magdunyog, ay siya pang minsay hindi makabili ng kahit isang kutsara ng mantika. Not only are the coconut farmers always in financial ICU, many coconut trees are also in the throes of extinction. Many are withering, shriveling, and wilting. About 44 million trees, or 1 in 7, are past their productive age. As a result, yield per tree has plummeted to 40 nuts a year from an ideal 75 nuts. But it is in prescribing the solutions that we slightly differ. I believe that if the industry is in crisis, efforts to revive it must be quick and massive. Hindi kailangan masyadong bureaucratic. Lalo tigit, hindi dapat perpetual yung trust fund. If the patient is in the ICU, then the treatment must be immediate and in adequate dosage so that the recovery will be fast. If we bat for an intervention that is perpetual, katulad dito, perpetual trust fund, kailan mo pa ibibigay yung pera ng magsasaka? Baka patay na yung kabayo. It means that we are not putting up a deadline on when to cure the sick. Why should we prescribe a drip in funds? Magkano ba ang kikitain ng Coco Levy Fund na to? 3%, 4%, 5% a year? Maximum of what? 5 billion, 4 pesos a year in interest income on an industry which clearly needs much more? Naghihingalo na ang ating industriya. Namamatay na sa uhaw. And we're giving him 1 tablespoon of water at a time to quench his thirst? Ilan po ang coconut farmers natin? 3.5 million. Pinakamarami ang magsasaka ng nyog na constituency ng DA. Pangalawa lang ang palay. Kung 5 billion ang yield a year, magkano ang per capita dividend per year? Kakarampot na 1,428 bawat pamilya. O di kaya, you can look at it from another perspective. Kung 3.5 billion hectares din ang coconut farm natin, ang investment natin, 1,428 pesos a year at most under the proposal. In this age of the 4 trillion peso budget, the 5 billion what government spends is only 11.6 hours. 29.4% lang ito ng pondo para sa travel ng pamalaan. This is supposed to be an industry rescue fund of an industry in distress. So let us put a deadline. I propose as well in the measure, 10 years. Hindi perpetual. A fighting target on when their misery will end. 50 years to me, or perpetual, is such a long time. 50 years is equivalent to 2 generations. This is a cure that is perhaps the equivalent of a protracted people's war. Walang katapusan. In our history, we have been through great disasters and upheavals. But in rising from the ashes, we prescribed a shorter reconstruction time because a quick turnaround is the best measure of success. Pagkatapos ng World War II, Mr. President, sinabi ba ng mga senador ng First Congress na bayan, perpetual ang reparations, na aabuti ng 50 years o di kaya walang katapusan? Nung pumutok ang pinatubo, perpetual fund ba ang pinangako natin sa mga naapektuhan ng lahar? I was a freshman congressman at that time. Ano ang promissory note? Help is on the way and it will be massive and quick. We did not offer a 50-year reconstruction timeline. We did not propose that by 2040, repair works will still be done. Ano ang sinabi natin? Pagpasok ng millennium, in place sa mga solutions. We did not, for rehabilitation, slow motion fashion, fast forward dapat ang ating peg. In the case at hand, starving a troubled industry of funds is not the way to save it. It can only spend its way out of the doldrums. We should not legislate out of fear, out of hurts inflicted by the past. Let us write laws instead motivated by the good that we and the future can deliver. Mr. President, I have been consistent in all the debates here on the floor when it comes to bigger government. Mas malaking gobyerno, mas mahaba ang proseso, mas maraming red tape. Napakarami na ng ating bureaucracia. Napakalaki na. At napakalaki ng administrative cost natin. Dadagdagan pa natin. For every peso that we spend, 65 centavos today, buong gobyerno goes to what? Admin expenses. Now, let us now enjoin the issues, Mr. President. What are we saying here? What is the proposal in the committee report? It creates 2 bodies. First, the Coconut Investment Trust Fund Committee. But it is not only a committee. It is a new government agency to be lodged under the office of the President with 9 members, appoint an executive director, perpetual in life din yung body ito, 9 members, executive director, magkakaroon ng staff yan, magkakaroon ng admin expense yan. To do what work? To determine how to invest the money and kung ipa-privatize yung ibang mga COCO-levy assets. Kung ako tatanungin, Mr. President, put it this way. Sino ba ang ahensya ng pamahalaan who should take care of the people's money to begin with? Hindi ho ba ang Department of Finance? Bakit tayo natatayo ng panibagong ahensya para doon? Saan ba i-invest yung money dito sa panukalang ito ngayon? I-invest sa government treasury bills. Sino ba ang umahawak ng government treasury bills? Bureau of Treasury. Sa aking bang panukala, may dagdag gastos ba sa gobyerno? Meron bang panibagong executive director? May mga bagong per diem bang ibibigay? Wala, Mr. President. Now, I was just supporting the proposal also of the good sponsor here with regard to the possibility of retaining for government certain assets of the COCO-levy fund. But frankly speaking, Mr. President, if I had my way, lahat ng COCO-levy assets, ibenta lahat yan, ilagay sa fund, ibigay sa magsasaka agad-agad. Government is not good in doing business. Government, I don't believe, should be in business to begin with. Nakialam sa coconut industry ang gobyerno, binisan ang magsasaka, lalong nalugi, bumagsak ang coconut industry. Ngayon, nandito na yung perang ito, lumaki naman yung pondo, ibalik na lang natin sa ating mga magsasaka. Now, there is another proposal here, creating another body, an ad hoc committee to do the planning. Ano naman yung ad hoc committee na yun? Composed of NEDA, DA, DAR, DILG, DPWH, DSWD, DTI, DOST, DOE, PCA, CHED, TESDA, NAPSI, and 3 other coconut representatives. Ano naman ang trabaho nun? It will replicate the work of the DA and the PCA. So masyadong maraming may responsibilidad. Ang tanong ko, Mr. President, on that issue, sino ba ang constituency ng Department of Agriculture? Hindi ho ba mga magsasaka? Sino ba ang pinakaraming magsasaka? Hindi ho ba yung coconut farmer? At yung rice farmer, silang dalawang pinakamarami. Now, ang gobyerno may mga specialty bodies na create, katulad ng PCA para sa coconut farmer. Meron 5 kinatawan din doon ang Organization of Coconut Farmers. Hindi natin binabago yun. Sinasabi natin, hindi na kailangan ng NEDA, hindi na kailangan ng DAR, hindi na kailangan ang DILG, DSWD, DPWH, DTI, DOST, DOE, TESDA, NAPSI, CHED, to replicate the work of the DA and the PCA. Kailangan meron responsable. Hindi pwede magturuan. Mawawalan na ngayon ng constituency din ng DA. Sasabihin lang, hindi na namin trabaho yan. Trabaho na yan ng isa pang komite. Kaya nga natin tinuyo yung DA para sa magsasaka at mangingisda. Hindi natin sinasabi dito, do not consult the farmers. Hindi natin sinasabi yun. Ngayon, kausap ko rin si Senator Tanyada kanina. And I highly respect Senator Tanyada. Unang-una, ang pamilya namin dalawa, mahaba na rin ang pinagsamahan. In fact, nung ang ama ko o mamay ko tumakbo ng Pangulo, ang Vice Presidente, Tanyada. Magkasama sila. Magkababayan kami sa Quezon. Pareho ang aming distrito sa Quezon. Taga-Ginyangan, Quezon din ako, at saka taga-Chaong. Ang Recto, taga-Quezon. Ang Mayo, taga-Lipa, Batangas. Kaya nagkakaunawaan naman kami ni Kababi Tanyada. At sinabi ko rin sa kanya kanina, ako naniniwala ko, mas maliit na gobyerno. Hindi kinakailangan lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan ay gagawa tayo ng bagong ahensya. Dahil nasasayang ang pera ng taong bayan. Pag ganun lagi ang ginagawa natin, pataas ng pataas ang buwis. At sayang ang pera ng taong bayan. Kaya ang aking proposal, para mapatupad ito na mabilis, ang unang-unang mahalaga, hindi dapat perpetual fund. Pwede natin pag-usapan. Ang panukala ko, 10 years. Ubusin yung pera yan, ibigay sa magsasaka agad-agad. Pero may plano dapat ang gobyerno ang gagawa, DA, PCA, kasama ang coconut farmers. Simplihin natin ang ahensya ng birokrasya. Pag masyado malaki ang birokrasya, maraming red tape yan. Magastos yan. Simplify natin para mapatupad ng agaran ang solusyon para sa coconut industry. Ngayon kung sa tingin ninyo, masyadong maikli, yung 10 taon at hindi natin kaya, edi sabihin nyo 20 taon. Pero wag natin sasabihin perpetual.
25 years siguro, para pwede rin.
Pwedeng pag-usapan yan. Pero wag perpetual. Wag natin sabihin na interest income lang ang ibibigay natin sa magsasaka. Wala nang matitira. Ang tanong ko, Ginoong Pangulo, Sa budget, magkano ba ang budget ng DA ngayon?
107 billion, pati yung OPAP.
Alam ko po yung sagot. Tinatanong ko lang yung sponsor kung alam niya ang sagot. Magkano ho ba ang budget?
Over 100 billion.
Over 100
But that
billion.
includes the NIA, the PCA, and the NFA.
Okay, tanong ko, magkano napupunta sa magsasaka ng palay?
Ang bulto.
More than 50% of the national budget goes to rice.
Yes.
Magkano naman ang binibigay natin sa magnyunyog? 1.4 billion lamang. Pag pinasa natin ito, magkano idadagdag? 5 sa PCA, sa amendment ni Cynthia. Tapos dito sa trust fund, magkano?
Around 2 to 3 billion.
3 billion.
But based
Do
on
you know that based on an inflation rate of 4%,
7 billion.
a third of the entire fund mawawala in 10 years?
Yes,
Bali wala. Lower
and-
than the inflation rate pa.
And the bill also provides that for the first 2 years, an additional around almost 8 billion.
That is right. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying, Mr. President, kung i-divide mo yan by 3.5 billion farmers, magkano yun? Or investment in 3.5 million hectares, magkano yun? You will not make a dent. You will not make a dent. This industry is in distress. And that's why we're proposing faster solutions. So nasaan na ba tayo? Ang pinag-uusapan natin yung sino mga ngasiwa ng pondong ito. Doon tayo mag-umpisa. DOF, Bureau of Treasury yung sinasabi ko. Ang sinasabi ng kabila, magtayo tayo ng 9-man committee. Gagawa tayo ng executive director. Mag-i-employ ng mga tao ito. Mahaba pa ang nakalagay dito. Mga rules of the game. Kung paano gagastusin yung pondo, so on and so forth. Tapos, perpetual yung fund. Interest income lang, kakarampot ang ibibigay sa magsasaka. Yun ang sinasabi ko. So, ang akin, umpisa tayo dito. Yung kanya ba, bureaucratic? Yung akin, hindi bureaucratic? I-invest ang pera, sino may responsibilidad dyan? Bureau of Treasury. Sino may trabaho ng pangangasiwa, paghawak ng pera ng gobyerno? Department of Finance. Simple. Ngayon, kung gusto natin pag-awayan mamaya o pag-usapan mamaya, yung privatization ng Coco Levy assets, kung maninindigan ako, if I will have my way, Mr. President, I'd rather sell all of that. Wala na dapat discretion. Sino mang committee na ito bebenta, ito wala. Ito mananatili. I'm just working with you on that proposal. But if I had my way, government should get away from running businesses in the coconut industry. Let the trabaho ng pribado sektor yan. Ang trabaho natin, tulungan yung mga magsasaka. Ibalik natin, unang-una, ibalik natin yung pera sa kanila.
Mr. President, just a few rejoinders, Mr. President. On the issue of yung paghahawak ng pondo ng gobyerno ay dapat sa DOF at Bureau of Treasury. Tama po yun. Pag pinag-uusapan as a whole ang pondo ng gobyerno. Subalit ang Coco Levy Fund ay hindi pangkaraniwang pondo ng gobyerno. Ito po ay galing po sa buwis na napakaraming dekada na binigay o binayad ng mga magnunyog. Kaya iba ho na ihahambing natin na kung pondo ng gobyerno ay dapat DOF at BTR. Tama po yun. But this is a special, this is not pangkaraniwang pondo. Ito po ay pondo na galing sa mga magnunyog mismo, kaya meron po silang, sabihin na po nating, kinalaman. Dito sa pondong ito, meron ho silang tinaya sa pondong ito, at sa matagal na panahon, hindi ho sila nakinabang sa pondong ito. Kaya po, napakahalaga sa kontekstong nabanggit na kapag
Coco Levy Fund ang pinag-usapan at disbursement nito, hindi lang dapat ang DOF at Bureau of Treasury ang tagapangasiwa, dapat merong kinalaman o merong partisipasyon at may tinig o boses ang mga magnunyog. Kaya ho yun ang paliwanag kung bakit hindi nga ho 9, 11. 5 sa Trust Fund Committee galing sa gobyerno at tiniyak po natin, ito'y mahabang debate. 6 ang galing sa mga representatives ng mga magnunyog, mga farmers organizations. Mas marami ang ating binigay na boses o tinig o boto ang mga magnunyog. Ito po ang kanila, galing din po sa kanila ito. Sila ho ang nagsabi, ang mga sektor, ang matagal nang nakikibaka para maibalik itong pondong ito sa magnunyog, sila rin ho ang nagsabi na dapat mas malawak ang partisipasyon ng mga magnunyog. Kaya po sana maunawahan ng ating actually, kung baga PMA, si Senator Recto ang aking mista. Sabay kaming pumasok dito sa Senado noong 2001. Batchmate kami.
Pareho pang artista yung asawa natin.
Oo nga. Kaya dapat nagkakasundo tayo at nagkakaintindihan.
Pareho maganda.
Nakalimutan ko tuloy
Mas
yung
gwapo lang ako. Nagbibiro lang, Mr. President.
Kaya po ang ating kahiling o ang ating paliwanag sa ating
Pero Mr. President, ako, ang pamilya namin, nag-ambag kami dito. Dahil kami, mangyunyug kami. Taga-Ginyangan nga ako eh. Pinamigay nga namin yung lupa rin namin doon sa agrarian reform eh. Kapitbahay ko si Kababi Tanyada eh.
Kaya
sa maganda nga dapat, may provision nga dito eh. Yung may hawak ng certificate na nagbayad ka dito, dapat i-reimburse. Wala nga yun dito eh. Hindi ko naman masabi yun dahil meron din ako certificates yan. So, magdunyog din ako. Maraming magdunyog din sa Quezon, sa Batangas, sa Mindanao. Hindi lahat sinasabi na yan ang magandang solusyon. Interesado ang iba dyan kung paano gastusin ibalik sa magsasaka. Hindi yung para pakialaman kung saan i-invest ang perang ito. Total naman, tinanggal na dito lahat. Everything is prohibited. You will only invest in the treasury. Yan ang naging problema nung nakaraan eh. Nung nakaraan, ginawa ni Marcos, 1 taon natin pinag-usapan ito, na in the name of the coconut farmers, bisan natin ang coconut farmers para sa kanila. Magtayo tayo ng ahensya ng gobyerno na may kinatawan ng coconut farmers, na sila rin ang naglagay ng kinatawan ng mga totoong coconut farmers din naman, na hawak nila. At sinabi, kayo mag-invest ng perang ito. Kaya magsabi kung ano yung mga oil mill na itatayo, ano mga kumpanyang bibilhin, magtatayo rin kami ng bangko. Ginawa lahat yun. Lumaki nga yung pondo. Pero hindi naman binalik sa magsasaka. Hanggang ngayon, yung pa rin na pinag-uusapan natin, wala akong nakikitang masyadong bago dito. I don't see much of a difference as far as the structure is concerned. What we're doing here is ensuring that the responsibility of government. Incidentally, one last point. Dito, we're making it very transparent in our proposal also. That while there is a trust fund, we are also saying every year, it will be in the general appropriations bill. For all the representatives of the people elected to see, every district, there are more than 80 provinces who also are involved in the coconut industry, same in Batangas. Marami kaming coconut farmers din doon, bordering the towns of Quezon and Batangas. Okay? So, we are putting all these amendments here also for transparency purposes.
Yes.
And dito rin, kahit naman sa committee report niya, halimbawa, yung shares of stock, saan ba ilalagay? Hindi ba sa pangalan ng Republic of the Philippines? Ganun din yun eh. You read it. Reconveyance of coconut levy assets, Section 5. All the assets will be in the Republic of the Philippines, kustodya ng gobyerno for the coconut farmers.
Mr. President, can I ask for 1 minute suspension?
Is it okay with Senator Rector? Not okay? Okay. So let's have a few minutes suspension.
si final appoint ng Presidente. Ano yun, Jo? Ano yun? Ano, sir?
Baka mag-ano na kayo.
Ano, sabi ko sila.
Wala na.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number
That
1,
will be the next motion, Mr. President. We move to suspend muna the period of individual amendments. We cleared
Yes.
it with the
Yes,
sponsor.
yes. Okay, so is there any objection? Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1233 under Committee Report number 8.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1537 under Committee Report number 145.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, this is the measure on the Healthy Nanay and Bulilit Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of individual amendments, considering that this is a substitute bill.
Okay.
I therefore move to recognize the sponsor of the measure, the Chair of the Committee on Women, Children and Family Relations and Gender Equality, Senator Riza Hontiveros, and to introduce individual amendments, Senator Recto.
Sponsor, Senator Tiveros, and is recognized, and to introduce amendments, Senator Recto.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Session
1
is
minute suspension. Yeah.
Session is suspended.
So how do we go about it?
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Our two colleagues have been recognized, so please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, just to make a manifestation, then we will go over these amendments line by line. First of all, let me thank the good sponsor of the measure. And incidentally, Mr. President, I'm also one of the principal authors of the measure. Most of the amendments that we are proposing are actually editorial. There are three substantive issues amendments that we are proposing as well. And for the record, the sponsors agreed to accept all the amendments. So procedurally, we will go through each one, which will be accepted anyway, but we will go through the motions of each one of the proposed amendments, Mr. President. So let me begin, and I thank the sponsor for accepting all these amendments.
Thank you also, Mr. President, to the good gentleman from Batangas for his amendments, which will go a long way in further improving our bill.
Thank you very much. And for the good work that the sponsor has done with regard to this measure. So let me begin, Mr. President, on page 1, line 1, after the word as, delete the extra word the.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Objection? Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 1, line 9. After the word 0, insert the figure 0, and after the word 2, insert the figure 2.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Objection?
On page 2, line 1, after the word 4, replace word pre-pregnant with adolescent females. Then on line 4, after the word sector, delete the comma, and the phrase using whole of society approach. Then on line 6, insert the phrase 1,000 before the figure 1,000, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses. Then on line 8, insert the figure 0 after the word 0, and after the word 2, replace the hyphen with the figure 2. Lastly, on line 9, delete the extra period after the word children.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Two paragraphs are involved. So any objection? Hearing none?
Still on page 2, line 18, insert the phrase 1,000 after the word first, then insert a comma in the figure 1,000, and enclose the figure in the parentheses. Henceforth, all other figure 1,000 appearing in the succeeding sections of the bill shall follow the same format.
Accepted, Mr. President.
It's specific as well as omnibus motion to amend. Any objection? Hearing none?
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 2, line 23, insert the acronym PPAN after the word nutrition, and enclose the acronym in parentheses. And lastly, on page 2, line 26, after the word development and a comma, capitalize each starting letter in the phrase local government units and insert the acronym LGUs.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 3, line 3, delete the phrase local government units and the parentheses of the acronym LGUs.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Still on page 3, line 6, capitalize each starting letter of the phrase geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas.
Accepted, Mr. President. And would the good gentleman further like to put in parentheses the acronym GIDA?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Okay.
Mr.
Any objection?
Still on page 3, line 13, after the word world, correct the spelling of the word health.
Accepted, Mr.
Any
President.
objection?
Still on page 3, line 19, insert the article the before the word mother.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lastly, on page 3, line 25, insert the word 3 before the figure 3, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses.
Accepted, Mr.
Any
President.
objection?
On page 4, line 8, insert the word abilities after the word social.
Accepted, Mr.
Any
President.
objection?
Still on page 4, line 9, insert the figure 9 in parentheses after the word 9. Then on line 10, insert the words 24 before the figure 24 and enclose the same in parentheses. Then on the same line 10, delete the words his/her before the word life.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 4, line 13, capitalize each starting letter of the phrase geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas.
Accepted, Mr. President, and to make it consistent with the
Accepted, Mr.
proposed amendment. Yes, Mr. President. The good gentleman's reading my mind.
Still on page 4, line 19, insert the words 2,500 before the figure 2,500, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses. Then insert a comma after the number 2 in the figure 2,500.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Okay, we're halfway, Mr. President. Still on page 4, line 26, replace the figures 2 and 3 with the words 2 and 3 and insert the phrase standard deviations before the acronym SD, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses. Henceforth, all standard deviation phrase appearing in the succeeding sections of the bill shall be replaced with the acronym SD.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 5, line... Oh, I'm sorry.
There's
Then
a
on
second
line
paragraph, Mr.
27,
President.
insert the phrase mid-upper arm circumference before the acronym MUAC, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses. Then after the word of, insert the phrase less than 125 millimeters, and enclose the figure less than 125 millimeters in parentheses. Then, after the article and, insert the phrase greater than or equal to 115 millimeters and enclose the figure greater than 115 millimeters in parentheses. After that, delete the remainder of subparagraph H.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 5, line 12, delete the extra words to the before the word child's.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you. Still on page 5, line 17, after the article A, delete the phrase mid-upper arm circumference as well as the parentheses in the acronym MUAC. Then on page 5, line 18, after the word of, replace the figure less than 115 with the phrase less than 115.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 5, line 25, enclose the figures 0 and 59 in parentheses and insert the words 0 and 59 before each figure.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection?
On page 6, line 12, transfer the phrase adolescent girls after the word children and a comma. Also in the same line 12, transfer the article and after the phrase adolescent girls.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 6, line 13, delete the phrase Philippine Plan of Action for Nutrition and the parentheses of the acronym PPAN.
PPAN.
Then on line 15, insert the word 17 before the figure 17, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 6, line 18, after the phrase disaster prone, delete the phrase geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas and the parentheses of the acronym GID.
Accepted,
A.
Mr.
Yes.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 6, lines 21 to 22. After the article D, delete the phrase presence of priority populations, which shall be the focus of budgetary support from the NGAs, and replace it with the phrase prioritization criteria. After which, on line 22, after the word provided, insert the word for, and replace the figure 15 with the figure 10.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 6, line 24 to 29, up to page 7, lines 1 to 14. Rephrase the entire section to read as follows. Program implementation, the DOH, in coordination with the NNC, the LGU, other NJs concerned, shall be responsible for the implementation of this act. It shall be implemented at the barangay level through the rural health units and or barangay health centers in coordination with the Sangguniang Barangay, with the mobilization of the barangay nutrition scholars and barangay health workers who shall be provided with resources and benefits to carry out their tasks. The LGUs are encouraged to integrate maternal, neonatal, child health and nutrition program in the local nutrition action plans and investment plans for health. The NNC and other NGOs concerned shall provide appropriate technical assistance to respective LGU counterparts in the development, formulation, and implementation of this act.
Accepted, Mr.
So
President.
this is one of the substantive amendments, Mr. President, that instead of the main responsibility with the LGU, it should be with the DOH, because the money is with the DOH.
Accepted,
Just for
Mr.
the
President.
just for manifestation.
Let's reflect the abbreviation BNS and BHWS after the Barangay Nutrition
that
Scholars
is
and
correct.
Barangay Health Workers.
That is correct.
Any objection? Approved.
Thank you. On page 7, line 17, replace the phrase municipal, city, and provincial, including the parentheses as well as the word appropriate with a comma. Then, still on line 17, insert the word concerned after the acronym NGAs.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 7, line 25, after the word vaccine, delete the remainder of the subparagraph C.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
Objection
President. On page 8, line 2, after the word practices, delete the remainder of subparagraph E.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 8, line 7 to 8, after the word supplementation, delete the comma in the phrase as appropriate.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Excuse me, where is that, sir?
This is amendment number 27. Still on page 8, line 7 to 8, after the word supplementation, delete the comma and the phrase as appropriate.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you. Still on page 8, line 10, after the word iodine. Delete the phrase in areas with low utilization of iodized salt and high incidence of iodine deficiency disorders. Then on line 11, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of subparagraph G.
Accepted, Mr.
An
President.
objection?
Still on page 8, line 14, after the word micronutrients, delete the phrase including folic acid, iron, vitamin A, and other micronutrients. Then on line 15, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of subparagraph A.
Accepted, Mr.
Any
President.
objection?
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 8, line 21, after the word utilization, insert the article of.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you. On page 9, line 5, after the article 2, replace highly at risk with high risk.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page
Approved.
9, line 14, replace the article 2 with the preposition with.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
Still on page 9, line 19, after the word delivered, replace the comma with a colon. Then on line 20, if the word infants, replace the comma with a semicolon.
Accepted, Mr. President.
No objection.
Thank you very much. Still on page 9, line 26, add the letter D after the word discharge.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
On page 10, line 7, delete the dash between the words friendly and spaces and insert a dash between the words child and friendly. Then on line 8, after the word emergencies, delete the remainder of subparagraph K.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
On page 10, line 12, before the word child, insert the article D.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
Still on page 10, line 21, after the word birth, delete the colon and replace it with a semicolon.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 11, line 3, delete the phrase ready-to-use supplementary food, as well as the parentheses of the acronym RUSF.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page...
Excuse me,
Yes.
because this term has been used earlier in the bill.
Yes, that is correct.
So no objection. Approved.
Thank you. Still on page 11, line 11, before the word private, insert the phrase in the.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 11, line 19, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of the subparagraph J.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Lastly, on page 11, line 21, after the word micronutrients, delete the phrase including folic acid, iron, vitamin A, and other micronutrients. Then on line 22, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of subparagraph K.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you. On page 12, line 6, delete the phrase parenting support interventions, as well as the parentheses of the acronym PCI.
PSI, Mr. President.
Sorry.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Approved.
Still on page 12, line 15, replace the article to with the preposition with, and delete the phrase mother and baby friendly health facility initiative, and the parentheses of the acronym MBFHFI. Then on line 16, replace the phrase Department of Health with the acronym DOH.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 13, line 27, delete the less than symbol. Insert the phrase less than 6 before the figure 6, which will then be enclosed in parentheses. Then after the word months, insert the word old.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
Thank you. On page 14, line 6, after the word done, insert the word 6 and enclose the figure 6 in parentheses.
Accepted, Mr.
Approved.
President.
On page 14, line 15, delete the phrase parenting support interventions as well as the parentheses of the acronym PSI.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 14, line 21, insert the word 6 and 2 before the figures 6 and 2, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 14, line 25, insert the figure 6 in parentheses after the word 6 and the word 2 before the figure 2, which shall then be enclosed in parentheses.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page
That's
yes.
approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 15, lines 45, after the word supplements, delete the phrase including vitamin A, iron, iodine, and other micronutrients. Then on line 5, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of subparagraph E.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 15, line 10, after the word complications, insert a semicolon.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Still on page 15, line 13, replace the dash between the figures 1 and 2 with the word 2. Enclose each figure in parentheses and insert the words 1 and 2 before the subfigures.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 16, line 5, after the connector, and delete the comma.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on, thank you. Still on page 16, line 10, change the word age to aged.
Accepted,
I'm sorry. Insert the words 10 and 18 before the figures 10 and 18.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Still on page 16, line 22 to 23, after the word supplements, delete the phrase including iron, folic acid, iodine, and other micronutrients.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 16, line 26, after the word micronutrients, delete the phrase such as iron, folic acid, vitamin A, and other micronutrients. Then on line 27, after the word necessary, delete the remainder of subparagraph G.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 17, line 5 to 6, after the acronym LGUs, delete the phrase municipal, city, and provincial, including the parentheses as well as the word appropriate. Then on line 6, insert the word concerned after the acronym NGAs.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you. Still on page 17, line 5, after the word evaluation, delete the semicolon and replace it with a period.
Line 15, Mr. President.
that's correct.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 17, line 16, insert a new section 10 to read as follows. Section 10, prioritization the program implementation. Prioritization the program implementation. The NGA's concerned shall prioritize implementation of the program in the LGUs that meet any of the following criteria. A, with the highest prevalence of undernutrition and nutrient deficiency among pregnant and lactating women and children aged 0 to 2 years. B, with available facilities or capability to implement the program. And C, which prioritize such program in their locality and are willing to provide counterpart resources for its implementation. Succeeding sections shall be renumbered accordingly.
Noting, Mr. President, that this is one of the substantive proposed amendments of the good gentleman. Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Thank you very
Approved.
much. On page 17, line 19, after the word other, replace the phrase appropriate human resources with the phrase personnel concerned.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 17, line 22, delete the entire section 11, the National Nutrition Council, and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you for that amendment. On page 19, line 11, italicize the word provided and capitalize the letter T of the word that.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 19, lines 14 and 15, after the words projects, change the comma to a semicolon.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 19, line 24, after the words program, delete the remainder of the paragraph.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 19.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Where is that page?
Still on page 19, line 24, after the word programs, delete the remainder of the paragraph.
Okay, so approve
Accepted.
program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still on page 19, line 29, delete the comma after the word national.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
On page 20, line 3, insert the figure 0 after the word 0.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Still on page 20, line 20, delete the extra word stated.
Accepted, Mr. President.
On page 20, line 23, insert a new section 15 to read as follows. Section 15, procurement of goods and services. The provisions of Republic Act number 9184 notwithstanding, the government agencies concerned are hereby mandated to establish a liberalized mode of procurement for this program, subject to the approval of the Government Procurement Policy Board. The public procurement for this program shall prioritize the participation of local and community-based producers, suppliers, and other service contractors.
Noting again, Mr. President, that this is one of the substantive amendments of the good gentleman. Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. After which, on the same page 20, insert a new section 16 to read as follows. Section 16, monitoring, review, and assessment of the programs. The NGAs and LGUs concerned shall regularly monitor, review, and assess the impact and effectivity of the program in consultation with their stakeholders. Succeeding sections shall be renumbered accordingly.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
Thank you very much. On page 21, line 2, after the word appropriations, replace the word for with the word of. Then on lines 8 to 9, delete the entire proviso. Then on line 11, delete the word appropriate before the acronym NGAs, and insert the word concerned after.
Accepted, Mr. President.
And lastly, on the title, amend the title to read as follows. An act providing for the scaling up of nutrition for the first 1,000 days of life through a strengthened integrated strategy for maternal, neonatal, child health, and nutrition, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Gladly accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Objection? Hearing none. Approved.
I'd like to thank the sponsor of this very important and milestone bill for all the work that she's put in the bill itself, in the committee report, and for accepting some of the amendments of all the amendments of our amendments of Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the good gentleman. And Mr. President and the good majority leader, may I just inquire, if there are no other members of the chamber who wish to propose amendments, if it would be proper already at this time to move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Before we do that, I'd like to commend Senator Recto for his archer eyes. No semicolon escaped his archer eyes. Okay.
This Atenean will accept that commendation by the
Majority Leader,
what
what can we say to the request of Senator Rondeberos?
There being no other senators who made reservations to introduce individual amendments, I move to terminate the period of amendments on Senate Bill number 1537 under Committee Report number 145.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1537 under Committee Report number 145.
Any objection? Approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration.
Any objection? Approved.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Approved.
I move
Suspend. Yeah.
to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1537 under Committee Report number 145.
Any objection? Okay, we suspend consideration of this measure.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, I would like to put on record the manifestation of support for the Senate defenders to be manifested on February 28 today, 2018. Mr. President, in behalf of the whole Senate, we would like to express our congratulations to our basketball team to the UNTV Cup known as the Senate Defenders for earning a final slot for the very first time in its 5 seasons of participation in the UNTV Cup. Our team, led by co-captains Senator Sonny Angara and Joey Villanueva, will battle the Malacanang PSC Camao in a best-of-3 championship series starting on March 4, Sunday. By being a finalist, the beneficiaries of the Senate Defenders, namely Kaithi Foundation Incorporated for the cancer-stricken children, Pangarap Foundation Incorporated, helping the street children to have a decent place and education, Tahanang Mapagpala, Immaculada Concepcion Foundation Incorporated, Home for the Elderly, are assured of 667,000 each, or a total of 2 million pesos, but can go higher to 4 million if our team will bag the championship trophy. Please support our team and watch their championship games on March 4, 2018, Sunday at the Pasig Sports Center, March 12, 2018, Monday at the Smart Araneta Coliseum, and March 19, 2018, Monday, if necessary, also at Smart Araneta Coliseum. Good luck, Senate Defenders.
Our support and prayers and best wishes are with our Senate Defenders.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 2
Majority
o'clock.
Leader, just one more matter. We need to designate our panel to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Bill number 7054 and Senate Bill number 1461. This is about the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund. And pursuant to Section 35, Paragraph 2 of the Rules of the Senate, I hereby designate the members of the Senate panel and the Conference Committee as follows. For the majority, and to act as chairman, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Ligarda, Senator Ejercito, Senator Zubiri, and to represent the minority, Senator Drilon. Yes, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other matters, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, 5 March 2018.
Is there any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, March 5, 2018.